The noon sun hammered New Montana with brutal indifference. Dust devils twisted between cracked saloon doors and abandoned mining carts. Jack Rourke leaned against the rickety wooden rail outside Cosmo's bar, his battered Winchester slung over one shoulder, hat pulled low against the glare. Then came the humming, deep, mechanical, predatory. A black Imperial lander, sleek as a blade, descended into the center of town, flattening everything with its downward thrust. Loose papers, hats, and tempers flew. The settlers, tough folks with lined faces and suspicious eyes, squinted at the monstrosity. They weren't armed to fight a damn spaceship. Jack spit into the dirt and tightened his grip on the rifle. The hatch cracked open with a hiss, and out marched Commander Velther Jax, polished crimson armor gleaming. His soldiers fanned out behind him, tall, blue-skinned Threxans wielding shimmering plasma rifles like toys. Jack didn't move. Neither did the others. Velther strode forward, smirking. His voice echoed, amplified through unseen tech. People of New Montana, you now serve under the authority of the Threxan Empire. Resistance is foolish. Cooperation is rewarded. The townsfolk murmured. A woman clutched her child tighter. A few old-timers shifted their feet, but no one stepped forward. No one except Jack, who lazily pushed off the railing and sauntered toward the invaders, boots kicking up little clouds of dust. Velther noticed him and laughed, a sharp, mocking bark. You, he said, pointing a clawed gauntlet at Jack. Is this your champion? Carrying that primitive stick? A ripple of cruel laughter ran through the soldiers. Jack lifted his Winchester slightly, balancing it across his palm as if weighing it. Good enough to keep the wolves off my cattle, Jack said casually. Might even be good enough for flea bags like you. A murmur of amusement ran through the settlers. Velther's smile thinned. He strutted closer, towering over Jack, inspecting the rifle with amused disdain. Then, with a flick of his armored hand, he slapped the rifle from Jack's grip. It clattered across the dusty street. Your toys belong in museums, Velther sneered. Jack's jaw flexed, but he didn't stoop to pick it up. He stared up at the alien, every muscle in his body still. Velther turned to the crowd. Your weapons, your lands, your livestock, all property of the Threxan Empire now. Compliance will be rewarded. Defiance will be crushed. Silence. Jack's gaze swept over the townsfolk. Good people. Scared people. Looking at him like maybe he could fix this, like maybe he had a plan. He didn't. Not yet. Velther stepped aside, motioning to his troops. They began collecting rifles from stunned settlers, tossing the heirlooms into a growing pile like firewood. A small girl sobbed as her grandfather's ancient revolver was ripped from his hand. Jack knelt slowly, retrieving his Winchester from the dirt. He ran a thumb along the scratched barrel, then slung it back over his shoulder with deliberate calm. He spoke low, but every word carried. You folks ever hear the one about the bear and the hunter? Velther turned, intrigued despite himself. Jack smiled thinly. The hunter thought he had the bear cornered. Big fancy gun. Shiny boots. Thought he was hot shit. Then the bear ate him anyway. The commander's smile returned, wider, colder. Charming! And yet here you stand, a relic waving old wood and iron at the future. Jack tipped his hat. Maybe. But sometimes the old ways have teeth. Velther snorted dismissively, and waved his hand. His soldiers moved toward the center of town, barking orders, breaking locks, marking buildings with imperial insignias. Jack watched them for a long moment, then turned and walked away, slow and unhurried. He knew Velther was watching, waiting for him to snap. Jack gave him nothing. Just a dusty silhouette fading toward the edge of town. The old barn door groaned under his hand. Inside, it was dark, musty, filled with the smell of oil and sweat and old dreams. Jack flicked the overhead switch, and naked bulbs buzzed to life, bathing the relic in warm light. There she was. An ancient Bell UH-1Y Venom helicopter, patched together from scrap, parts salvaged from forgotten wars. The hull was dented, the paint peeled, but the machine had the stubborn, coiled energy of a pit bull. Mounted underneath her battered belly was the real gem, a Gu-17 / a minigun, 6 barrels of pure, unfiltered hate. Jack walked up, laid a hand on the cool metal. "You ready for one last ride, girl?" he whispered. The helicopter didn't answer. She didn't need to. Jack grabbed a rag and started wiping her down, clearing away years of dust with methodical care. Every bolt, every seam, every scar, he knew them by heart. He'd saved this bird from the scrapyards for a reason. Not because he thought he'd need her. Because deep down, he knew someday he would. Behind him, the barn door creaked open again. A shadow fell across the floorboards. "Jack?" a voice called. Marlene, the town mechanic, tough as nails and just as sharp. "What the hell are you doing?" Jack didn't look back. He kept polishing the side of the chopper, voice steady. "Teaching some folks that just because something's old doesn't mean it's harmless." Marlene stepped closer, saw the helicopter, and let out a low whistle. "You're crazy." Jack grinned. "Maybe. But crazy's all we got left." For a moment, Marlene just stood there, staring at the ancient warbird. Then she spat into the dirt, wiped her hands on her jeans, and said, "What do you need?" Jack straightened, wiped grease on his jeans, and turned to her with a fire in his eyes. "Fuel. Ammo. Parts. And about 6 fools willing to bet their lives on an old engine and a whole lot of stubborn." Marlene cracked a grin. "New Montana's got stubborn in spades." Jack nodded. "Good," he said, his voice low and lethal. "Because tomorrow, we show those shiny bastards just how dangerous relics can be." The barn groaned under the weight of dreams too heavy to carry. Jack worked in silence, hands moving with a surgeon's precision. Grease stained his knuckles, dust clung to his sweat-soaked shirt. Above him, the cracked rotor blades of the helicopter hung like a question asked decades ago but never answered. Marlene returned with a battered trolley piled high, spare parts, loose wiring, half a canister of fuel. She slammed the brakes with her boot, sending the trolley rocking. "Not much," she said, wiping her forehead. "Empire's been bleeding us dry for months." Jack inspected the pile, his face unreadable. "It'll do." One by one they came. Old men, calloused hands twitching with the muscle memory of 100 forgotten battles. Teenagers too young to shave but old enough to hate. Marlene's brother Hank brought an ancient generator still reeking of diesel. Sheriff Carter limped in with a box of loose .50 cal rounds. No speeches. No grand oaths. Just nods, tight faces, and the quiet thrum of purpose. Jack stood before them, turning a wrench slowly in his hand. "We're not soldiers anymore," he said, voice low but hard. "But we know what matters. They think we're broken. That we'll roll over. We're about to remind them why poking old things with sharp sticks is a real bad idea." A few chuckles, grim and sharp. No one asked for odds. They knew. Jack barked assignments without raising his voice. "Marlene, fuel lines. Carter, ammo belts. Hank, rotor stabilizers." They moved. The hours blurred into each other, broken only by the clatter of tools and the occasional hiss of frustration. Sweat poured. Fingers bled. The old helicopter creaked and groaned, protesting the indignity of resurrection. "Jack!" Marlene called from under the cockpit. "The ignition system's shot." Jack knelt beside her, hands steady. "Bypass it. Hotwire direct to the starter." "You sure?" "Nope. But it'll fly or it'll burn, and right now I'll take either." She grinned and kept working. By nightfall, the barn throbbed with the smell of old oil and new fear. Jack stood back, wiping his hands on a filthy rag, studying the bird with a mechanic's eye and a soldier's heart. She looked mean. Patches of sheet metal armored her skin. Welds snaked like angry scars across her fuselage. The Gatling gun gleamed dully under her belly, its 6 barrels whispering promises Jack didn't dare say aloud. Sheriff Carter tossed him a pair of cracked aviator sunglasses. "Found these. Figured you'd want to look the part." Jack caught them midair and slid them on without missing a beat. "Appreciate it." Outside, a low whine rose, a Threxan patrol skimming the outskirts, prowling for trouble. Their sleek hoverbikes cut the darkness like silent sharks. Marlene stiffened. They're getting closer. Jack didn't blink. Let him. He stalked to the bird, swung into the pilot's seat with a grunt, and flipped a series of rusted toggles. The old girl shuddered violently, coughing smoke and curses into the night air. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then she roared. The engine caught like a firestorm, blades chopping the air in savage, uneven beats. Dust exploded in every direction, drowning the barn in a storm of grit and hope. Outside, the patrols spun in confusion, lights flaring, comms buzzing. Jack's grin stretched wolfish behind the controls. She's alive! Marlene shouted, barely audible over the roar. Alive enough, Jack said. Get those ammo belts loaded. We're not building a museum piece. They worked faster now, desperation sharpening every move. Carter fed the Gatling gun's drum. Hank tightened the final bolts. Marlene patched exposed wires with bits of chewing gum and prayers. Jack tapped the fuel gauge. Half a tank. Maybe an hour of fight, if he was lucky. Good enough. He pulled out a crumpled photograph from his shirt pocket, his family, lost years ago to another empire's arrogance. He tucked it above the dash, just within sight. Tonight wasn't about winning a war. It was about making damn sure the bastards remembered losing a battle. The noise drew more attention. Lights speared the dark, voices barking in alien tongues. Plasma rifles snapped to ready positions. Jack! Marlene yelled, pointing through the dust. They see us! Jack pushed the throttle forward. The helicopter lurched into the air, sputtering, coughing, but climbing. Below, the townsfolk scrambled for cover as energy bolts scorched past, painting the barn in sickly green light. A plasma blast tore through a stack of hay bales where Jack had stood seconds before. He banked left, keeping low, weaving between buildings. His pulse hammered in rhythm with the rattling engine. In the rearview mirror, he caught a glimpse of Velther's soldiers stumbling out of their lander, gawking up at the insane human flying a death trap. Jack toggled the weapon system, felt the Gatling gun spool up beneath him. He thumbed the safety off. Time for some history lessons, he muttered. The minigun roared, a deep, savage growl that shook the air. Tracers stitched a line across the dusty street, shredding the Threxan patrol before they could even raise their rifles. Armor cracked. Blood misted. Bodies crumpled. The crowd of settlers erupted in stunned shouts, part terror, part awe. Jack kept the gunfire low, precise. No civilians. Just the invaders. Below, Velther's forces scrambled for cover, unprepared for the raw, relentless fury of old Earth's wrath. Jack looped around, lining up for another pass. He wasn't here to fight clean. He was here to remind them why humanity survived every hell thrown its way. The helicopter shrieked through the night, a banshee stitched together with rust, rage, and resolve. On the ground, Velther stared up, armor battered, face twisted with disbelief. Jack caught his eye through the cracked cockpit glass. He tipped his hat once, slow and mocking. Then he unleashed hell again. The Gatling's roar split the night in two. Down below, plasma bolts lit the streets like dying stars. But Jack was already past them, weaving low between rooftops, the helicopter coughing smoke and defiance. Reload! He barked into the radio, static crackling. Marlene's voice came back, tense but steady. Got another belt ready! Jack swung the bird into a vicious turn, the tail rotor whining against the strain. Below, Velther's soldiers scrambled behind walls and overturned carts. Their sleek energy rifles were useless against something they couldn't track, couldn't lock onto fast enough. Jack was moving too erratic, too dirty, like a wolf among startled cattle. He gritted his teeth and dropped altitude. The Gatling gun spun up again, sending another storm of lead hammering into the makeshift barricades. Metal screamed. Alien bodies fell. One patrol managed to get off a concentrated volley, plasma bolts arcing through the smoke, but Jack pulled hard left, skimming so low his landing skids clipped a fence post. Laughter bubbled up in his throat. Wild, ragged, real? They thought they could outgun Earth by pointing prettier weapons at it. But here he was, one man, one ancient machine, ripping a hole through an empire's pride. "Jack, heads up!" Marlene shouted over the radio. "Landers opening back up. Heavy armor rolling out." Jack craned his neck. Sure enough, the main bay of the Imperial transport hissed open, and two heavy walkers clanked into view, massive, crab-like beasts of steel, bristling with plasma cannons. Their targeting systems locked onto him with cold precision. Jack muttered a curse and punched the throttle. The helicopter surged forward, rattling so hard it felt like it might shake itself apart. Bright green beams slashed through the night. One scorched past his tail rotor, too close. He banked hard again, feeling the centrifugal force slam him sideways in the seat. "Can't outgun 'em," he said under his breath. "Gotta outthink 'em." He darted toward Main Street, threading between buildings. Plasma beams gutted the bakery and the old sheriff's office, but Jack stayed ahead of the chaos, pulling the walkers into a clumsy pursuit. They were fast but not nimble, designed for open battlefields, not tight frontier towns. Jack caught sight of the old grain silo at the edge of town, tall, rusted, barely standing. Perfect. He clicked the radio. "Hank, Marlene, silo charges ready?" "Armed and set," Hank replied instantly. "Just say the word." Jack twisted the chopper in a brutal spin, facing the walkers bearing down on him. "Light it up." There was a beat, then the silo erupted, a thunderclap tearing the sky apart. Metal shards rained down. Dust and debris engulfed the street. The walkers staggered, blinded. Jack dove through the chaos, squeezing the trigger. The Gatling screamed again, bullets punching through weakened armor. One walker collapsed sideways, venting sparks and alien fluids. The second opened fire blindly, panicking. Plasma bolts ripped across the dirt, carving burning trenches, but they weren't aimed. Jack circled like a hawk, merciless, chewing the last walker apart piece by piece. When the smoke cleared, both machines lay broken, twisted into scrap. For a second, the town held its breath. Then the settlers whooped and hollered, rifles raised high. Courage rippled outward like wildfire. Farmers, ranchers, blacksmiths, they charged into the streets, ducking behind wreckage, trading wild shots at the scattered Threxian troops. Jack's heart thundered. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was a damn rebellion. He spotted Velther near the center of the chaos, barking orders, his crimson armor marked by scorched scars. The commander pointed toward Jack's helicopter, rallying what was left of his elite guard. Jack sneered and nosed the bird lower. "You want a piece of me?" he muttered. "Come get it." The helicopter shuddered under the strain. Too many hits, too much stress, but Jack coaxed her forward, coaxed her angry spirit into one more charge. The Gatling barrels glowed red-hot. The feed belt jammed once, Marlene's voice barking fixes over the radio, but Jack cleared it with a hard slam on the housing. No finesse now. Just raw guts and steel. He aimed straight for Velther. The guards fired up, plasma lancing toward the battered chopper. One bolt kissed the skids, spinning Jack sideways. He fought it, muscles burning against the stick. Two guards went down under a sweeping blast of bullets. Velther dove behind a transport wreck, furious but very much alive. Jack grimaced. No clear shot. Low fuel warning blared at him. The helicopter was coughing worse now, power flickering. He was running out of time. Jack swung wide, gaining altitude barely above the rooftops. He needed one more pass. One good run to break the commander's spine. On the ground, the settlers pressed harder, pinning down Threxian forces with relentless old-school gunfire. Jack's madness had infected them. The whole town was fighting like devils, like people who had remembered they had nothing left to lose. His hands tightened on the controls. Velther was scrambling for an escape pod mounted at the side of the lander. Not today. Jack dropped altitude like a hammer, lining up the shot. The Gatling gun spun up one last time, the barrels shrieking in protest. Then impact. A plasma shot, wild and desperate, caught the helicopter dead center. The bird lurched violently, the cockpit flooding with smoke. Alarms screamed. Jack fought the spin, slammed the controls hard right. He didn't care about surviving the crash. He cared about landing the last blow. Through the fractured glass, he saw Velther dive for the pod door, fumbling. Jack aimed the dying chopper straight at him. The ground rushed up. With a final roar, Jack crashed. Jack hit the ground hard. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. The world twisted in a violent tumble of dirt, smoke, and fire. When the chopper finally slid to a grinding halt against a broken water trough, Jack's world went white with pain. For a long second, he just lay there, pinned by the crash harness, lungs refusing to pull in anything but smoke. The cockpit groaned under the weight of the ruined machine, threatening to crush him. "Move, damn it!" Jack fumbled with the belt, forcing stiff fingers to obey. The latch finally gave, and he dropped onto the splintered floor. His right leg screamed protest, but it held. He shoved aside broken panels and clawed his way out, coughing blood and soot. The world outside was chaos. Fires chewed through storefronts. Plasma bolts slashed the air in wild arcs. Settlers fought hand-to-hand now, swinging tools, knives, anything they could grip. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was survival boiled down to raw nerve. Jack staggered forward, every muscle in his body threatening mutiny. His vision swam, but he focused through the blur. Velther. The Threxan commander had made it to the escape pod, struggling with the sealed hatch. His armor was dented, cape torn and filthy. Pride and control stripped away. He looked small now. Beaten. Jack limped faster, dragging his wrecked body across the square. Each step jarred through him like hammer blows. Velther heard him coming. The alien spun, plasma pistol raised. Jack threw himself sideways. The shot grazed past, burning a line across his shoulder. He hit the ground hard, rolled once, came up near a dead soldier's fallen rifle. He snatched it up without thinking. Ancient muscle memory took over. Velther fired again, missing wide in panic. Jack squeezed the trigger. The old projectile weapon barked once, the bullet punching clean through Velther's side. The alien stumbled, roaring in pain, pistol falling from his grasp. Jack advanced, rifle steady, heart pounding slower now, calmer, colder. Velther dropped to one knee, one hand clamping the hole in his armor. Blood leaked between his fingers, thick and dark. "You think," Velther rasped, "this changes anything?" Jack kept walking. "You think your little stunt matters?" the commander hissed. "We are inevitable." Jack stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the cracks in Velther's golden eye plates. Close enough to smell the fear rolling off him in waves. He leveled the rifle at Velther's head. "No," Jack said quietly. "You're just another fool who thought humans were finished." Velther's face twisted in rage. "You're nothing but dust!" Jack shrugged. "Funny thing about dust, gets everywhere." Without ceremony, he swung the rifle around and slammed the butt into Velther's helmet. The alien crumpled to the dirt, unconscious. The fighting slowed as the settlers saw their commander fall. Confusion rippled through the Threxan ranks. Without orders, they flailed, some firing blindly, others dropping their weapons and bolting for the lander. Jack raised the fallen plasma pistol in his other hand, firing a shot into the air. "Stand down!" he roared. The sound ripped through the battlefield. Settlers froze. Threxans hesitated. Jack stepped forward, blood staining the dust at his feet, the smoking plasma pistol still raised. "Any of you still feeling lucky?" he growled, voice like grinding gravel. "Step right up." No one moved. Slowly, one by one, Threxan rifles clattered to the ground. Sheriff Carter, his badge half melted, limped to Jack's side. "What now, boss?" Jack wiped blood from his mouth and smiled grimly. "Now we send a message." Together, they dragged Velther's limp body to the steps of the ruined town hall. They propped him against the shattered doors, a warning in battered crimson armor. Jack turned to the gathered settlers. "You think they'll come back?" one man called out, voice shaky. Jack looked around at the faces, bloodied, bruised, defiant. "Probably," Jack said. But next time, they'll remember what's waiting for 'em. A ragged cheer rose, fierce and raw. In the distance, the surviving Threxan troops scrambled aboard the retreating lander. Engines whined, lifting the battered ship into the smoky sky. No parting shots. No threats. Just shame and silence. Jack watched them vanish into the stars. Behind him, Marlene approached, a crooked grin on her dirt-smeared face. "You're a damn lunatic, Jack Rourke," she said. He chuckled once, wincing as pain flared through his ribs. "Been called worse." She held out a battered cigar. Jack took it, lit it with a plasma torch scavenged from the battlefield, and took a long drag. He surveyed the ruined town, the wounded gathered around makeshift barricades, the flags still fluttering stubbornly above shattered rooftops. They weren't soldiers. They weren't even a proper army. But they were free. Jack blew out a thin stream of smoke and muttered, half to himself, half to whatever gods might still be listening. "Tell the galaxy. Humans don't roll over." He crushed the cigar under his boot and turned back to the people he'd bled for. "Let's rebuild," he said. And they did.